We no, brilliant.
We are live.
Yes,
Joel,
after
just
numerous
catching your breath there, grabbing some water.
after numerous technical difficulties, Facebook disconnecting itself for some bizarre reason, and
It's
the
all
graphics
good.
not really starting.
Well, hey, we're all good. We're live, and I'm excited for this conversation. So, just a quick intro for everybody before we get started. We have Jack Hawes, which I'm excited to get to learn a little bit more about today, and then obviously our founder of Rockstar X, Joel Felsenstein. So Jack is not only a passionate advocate for the National Autistic Society, but living with atypical autism, he is not only the philanthropy manager for the National Autistic Society, but also a beacon of hope for over 700,000 autistic people. And those are only the ones that have actually had the assessment, as it were. And the journey from fundraising expertise to impactful public speaking. I mean, I've got two people over here who have kind of taken on what most people would assume is not something people with autism are comfortable with. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes. Joel, with his extremely interesting background and his resilience and triumph over challenges with MSUD, as well as atypical autism, is determined to overcome his medical hurdles and his interesting stories that have impacted his life by founding Rockstar X, a community that champions the potential of those who think differently. And this isn't just about sharing experiences, but it's a platform for change. So our conversation today is all about educating people. Unfortunately, the conversation around autism is not spoken about as publicly and as often as it should. And I just think about my day today where I've been speaking to people about autism and the challenges that people still face because they just don't know what's available, what resources are available, and they don't realize the massive impact autistic people are making around the world. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Today is all about, where are NDs, or those of you who don't know what ND stands for, neurodiverse individuals, why are they so creative and uncommonly talented? And it's interesting. I've recently been speaking to a lot of people where they're only now starting to realize how to communicate with people that have autism. And one of the big things that have always baffled me is the fact, Joel always says this, is, instead of asking a third party how to speak to an autistic person, why not just speak to them directly and ask them how you like to be communicated with? It sounds logical, but unfortunately humans don't follow a logical path quite often. So Jack, welcome to the show. Joel, thank you for putting this together. Jack, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got involved with the National Autistic Society, who you are. Give us a bit of a rundown of who you are and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And by the way, love the intro. It's my appraisal at work next week, so I'll use that in my appraisal, I think. Thank you very much. Especially if I ask for a pay rise anytime soon, I'll definitely mention that. That I'm a beacon of hope to everyone. To describe me very succinctly, I'm in my early 30s. I'm autistic. I was diagnosed when I was 19. So I went to a special needs school till I was 8 years old. And then halfway through year 3 in England, I'm not sure exactly what year it is in other countries, but it's the year that you're in between the ages of 7 and 8. I went to a mainstream school for the rest of primary and then secondary school. And then I went from there to university, the University of Kent in Canterbury. It's a lovely town if you've not been. Great train from St Pancras to Canterbury. I highly recommend it. But I went to university. I stayed on campus, and I very quickly realised that it wasn't for me. Because university, especially in England, it's not so much about studying, it's the social aspect, and there's quite a strong sort of partying aspect to it. Certainly there was then, maybe a bit less now, but certainly when I was a student, it was, you go out as many times a week as you can. And if you're only studying, it's a sort of helpful byproduct. It's not really what you're there for. And yeah, like Freshers Week was an absolute disaster. I was quiet, reclusive, and in hindsight, I was years away from being ready to socialise, to mingle, to go out with people on a regular basis. Because the whole thing about clubbing and nightclubs and pubs and alcohol and all that sort of thing, I was just years away from being ready for all that. So very quickly it dawned on me that there was something different about me. Not necessarily a negative thing, but something quite different that, it's not normal that I'm hiding in my room while everyone else is having seemingly quite a good time. Like, I shouldn't not be in my room playing Football Manager all night when everyone else is going out and gallivanting, Like, I realised quite quickly that something's different here. And I went through a phase of literally Googling any sort of condition I found that might make your behaviour a bit different. So I was Googling subtypes of depression and anxiety. I was trying to work out in myself sort of what was different about me because I had absolutely no idea. And then one day, I don't know how, but I Googled Asperger's syndrome, which isn't a real diagnosis now. It was stricken from the DSM, but it was then. And it's basically, in layman's terms, it was like diet autism. Like autism, but not the whole shebang. It was sort of in the middle. And maybe why it's stricken from the DSM, it's not really a fitting way of describing someone, I don't think. But I Googled that in all the online tests, and I was fantastic at those tests, believe me. I was getting 100 out of 100. I was absolutely nailing it. So quite quickly after that, I saw my GP, said, I think I might be autistic, mate, can you help me get a diagnosis? Not quite so cheekily as that, but, I was quite direct about it. I remember printing off, the definition of autism, because I had an idea my GP would not have a clue about what it was. So I remember literally printing off, information sheets and shoving them, in his face, pretty much, to say, this is me. I want to be diagnosed. Can you help me? And it didn't work because he had no idea what autism was. I mentioned Asperger's syndrome. He thought I meant aspergillosis, which is something completely different. So very fortunately, I actually had all this information on me. And I was like, mate, this is autism. I think I've got it. Can you help me get a diagnosis, please? And luckily he did. I only got diagnosed after I left university because I was there for a term, went back for Christmas, went back to uni for literally a week. And I remember one Wednesday night, I went to bed and I decided, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm off. This is not for me. And literally the next morning, I packed up the stuff and went. And then I think about a week later, my big sister drove me back. I picked up the stuff that I'd left there, handed the keys in, went straight home. And that was it. I left university. And I got a diagnosis just after that.
Wow. And tell me, had you had the diagnosis before, do you think that would have made a difference to how you approached university?
Definitely. I wouldn't have gone. If I'd gone, I'd have stayed at home. Yeah, it would have been very, very helpful. All through school as well, because I found secondary school very difficult. And there was a certain degree of what would now be defined as bullying. I mean, at the time, I didn't realise that I was being bullied because when it becomes normal, you don't realise what's happening to you necessarily. But, I was called some quite unpleasant things on a daily basis. And I went through a phase of bunking off school quite a lot. And kids, please don't bunk off. It's not cool. It's not good. Yeah, please don't do that. Or make me influence you into doing it. Please don't. But I was a quite unhappy, confused teenager, not sure what was up with me, what was up with other people, just hating school. So when I could find ways to stay at home all day and play the PlayStation, I did that. Which wasn't good, but in hindsight, I understand why. It was all out of unhappiness in other parts of my life. It would have been so helpful for me to have that knowledge earlier.
I think
I would argue, they're playing PlayStation all day long, every day. Certainly in my case, you learn a lot more than you do in school.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's interesting because the challenge that I see so many people with autism face is the fact that we're hearing more and more adults finding out, but not because necessarily they get a diagnosis, but where they are potentially parents and they take their children for a diagnosis and they're sitting there going, isn't that normal? That's me. That's like, and then they're like, oh, okay, hold on. So my child's going through all these battles that I went through, and that isn't actually normal. And then they kind of taking that step back and going, maybe I should have a diagnosis. And that's where they're finding out, because, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I've known about autism since, geez, I'm going to sound very old now, over 25 years. But I still know lots of people today that you mention it and they have absolutely no idea. And what you said there, Jack, about your GP having to hand them information.
Yeah.
And the reality is, GPs, teachers, head teachers, they have such little exposure and training on it that they don't even know how to spot it properly. And it gets misdiagnosed quite often as well, because people think that just because you've met one autistic person, you've met them all. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So one of the things that I am quite adamant on, and some people disagree with me on this, is early diagnosis. Because I believe that, and I'd love both of your opinions here, is I believe that the earlier we can have a child diagnosed to know whether they are autistic or not, or even on the when it comes to being neurodivergent in some form, the earlier you can put support into place to give them a better quality life. I mean, I'd like to put that out to you, firstly to you, Jack, and then to yourself, Joel. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, it's completely contextual. There'll be certain cases where that is better, particularly when people are particularly suffering, and they really do need, daily support and almost round-the-clock care. I think in such instances, then you definitely do want that diagnosis. Because a diagnosis, it doesn't just mean knowledge. It means help with your benefit claims, for example. It means help with your GP. It means you can get your child into a SEN school when you couldn't before. Like from on a more logistical basis, it's hugely helpful. Other times, it can be helpful, but it has to be harnessed in the right way. I'm still, as an autistic person, slightly wary if it's diagnosed too early or diagnosed like even before birth, even that you're then heading down into some dangerous territories where you're heading into not quite eugenics, but like the sort of so early on that like people train you to not be autistic from a very early age, and they try to almost rid you of your neurodivergencies. And that's the one thing I'm scared of, because I think the world is a lot better for having people who are neurodivergent. And while I don't wish upon people to suffer because of that, obviously I don't. I also want people to have unique skill sets and traits that only they have, and everyone to be an individual. And I don't want that to be risked just for an early diagnosis. I want people to be able to naturally blossom bloom like a flower and grow and develop, and not just have a label and then people support you on the basis of the label and not on the basis of your personality and your behaviours. That'd be my concern of a really early diagnosis.
I think, I'm so glad that you've said that, because it is so important to understand, because the danger of early diagnosis comes with some serious cons, as as opposed to pros, because of the fact that once that label is given, then you get treated differently. Which, yes, there's a certain amount of differently that needs to be done, but if you label somebody too quickly, because the problem that we have currently is that label assumes that you're unable to do something because of the word disability, and the reality is, ultimately, it should be a diagnosis of, okay, programming is different, we need to support differently, and that's as far as that should go. So therefore we can look at how do we enable the environment, because we are talking today about the incredible creativity and some of the incredible skill sets that autistic and neurodiverse individuals tend to show above and beyond neurotypical individuals. So early diagnosis needs to come with a certain duty of care as to how that's handled, because I've seen what a label can do to individuals and almost remove all their opportunities because you're not like others, so therefore you can't. So I hear that, and definitely something we need to delve into a little bit more. Joel, what are your thoughts?
I was diagnosed at the age of 9. I didn't have such a smart mouth that I do nowadays, but if I did, I would have probably said that would explain a fuckload.
Joel, can you check your sound for us, because you're coming across a little bit soft on my end?
Right, let's move that forwards. It may be a dynamic microphone, but it's only as dynamic as the distance. Is that any better? I feel like I'm being
Much
pushed
better.
into the back of my chair.
Much better.
Right, where was I? Oh, yes. In my case, I didn't really notice much difference. Later on in my life, I thought, okay, that explains a lot. But I did think that being extraordinarily good at stuff was normal.
And we've seen with through our relationship over the last couple of years, where things that would take me quite a while to kind of repetitive to kind of get through, and me being with ADHD, so I've got to learn in a different style, and then I'll show you something, and then you come back and you go, oh, have you looked at this feature? And I'm like, where did you find that? And you've already torn it apart because you've got a different way of thinking and analyzing something, which as you were saying, Jack, it's those things that complement others. If we can enable those environments, people are much more able to find new solutions to things and creative ways of doing things, and it's finding how do we mesh that all together so that we can complement each other, as opposed to looking at somebody and going, okay, well, you've got a label, you probably can't do this. In fact, we need to be looking at this and going, okay, well, if somebody's got a label, what is their kind of superpower and their focus? But the challenge there is having the support,
Yes.
to be able to allow that person to discover what their superpower is. Unfortunately, most, like you've experienced, schools, universities,
Yep.
colleges, they just don't have the resources to actually help that person discover, and therefore the atypical world that we live in can be very harsh in the sense of there's no patience because you don't fit in our structure.
Yeah.
So therefore, remove that person so that we can work more efficiently. But the reality is, I've learned this from having children. If you take a child and you, as an example, if I'm busy working and my child comes in and interrupts me, and I just go, get out of here, go to your room, and I keep doing that, I keep having the same problem until I sit down and I find out, okay, what is it that you need? How can we help you? Explain to them that I'm currently working, and there has to be that path of communication, that patience to find out what the need is, so that we can then move past it. But once you've done that, that's where the magic happens. Unfortunately, we live in a world where we have TikTok and it's 5-second, 10-second attention span. So, Jack, I'd like to ask you this question before we kind of get a bit deeper into the creative and uncommonly talented, because I know you've been exposed to incredible people with your time at NAS.
Like you two, yeah.
Say that again?
Like you two, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Joel, maybe. I mean, he can play the drums. He can teach the drums. He can play the guitar, teach the guitar. Then he does all this audio stuff and tons of other things. I struggle with, just trying to focus on looking ahead
Waking
of
up in the
a
morning.
squirrel. But one of the questions and one of the things that I was talking to somebody about earlier today was the fact that very few people know what support is available. Now, for somebody like yourself that you only diagnosed after going to university, and now working with the organization that you are, what are the kind of things that have enlightened you as to what is available as support for autistic people out there?
Well, the best support I've seen is in the NAS's schools. So we have 4 schools which educate around 300 autistic pupils a year. And in our schools, we have individualised plans for every pupil. And most pupils have 2 plans, one for education, one for behaviour. So every pupil has at least 1, if not 2, plans that are put together by staff and not are their parents or guardians. And to get individualised... Yeah, so every pupil has their own unique plan, at least one. Some people have 2 plans, one for education, one for their behaviour, which are seen as separate. And if we could provide everyone, like in the world, with individualised support, catered to their needs, put together by people who know these people inside out, that's the absolute ideal. I mean, there's a quote, isn't there? Each to one's need, each to one's ability. I think Karl Marx said that. But like that's the ideal. That's what you want in a perfect world. Unfortunately, I do know that's not possible, and that support is given not on a one-to-one basis, but on a much more generalised basis. And that support, frankly, is quite lacking. I mean, when you're diagnosed, that's it. Nothing happens. Like, you're given a diagnosis, like a bit of paper, and then what you do after that, there's nothing. So the onus is on you as an autistic person to find what's out there, which isn't really fair. I mean, you've probably experienced some level of discrimination and difficulty, but being autistic, get your diagnosis as well. It's a very stressful process. Like you have to see a GP, sometimes another GP, sometimes someone else. Then you meet the diagnostician. The whole process takes years most of the time. Like at the moment, there's a waiting list of 150,000 people across the UK, and the average diagnosis waiting time, I think, is years at this point. And for some people, it's 3, 4, 5 years, because the healthcare system in this country, it varies by location. So some places it's 6 months, others it's 6 years, and it's a complete lottery what one you get. And a lot of the time, I think often on a class basis, it's the poorer, more working class areas when the waits are longer, and of course the more salubrious areas where support is radically available. But again, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, very similar to a lot of the school systems at the end of the day about which school you go to, where you go to, whether it's an affluent school, whether there's money available, and it comes down to this finite resource, which in theory is a finite resource, but as we know, countries around the world are in trillions of pounds worth of debt, and they just print more money. So the reality is, if resources get made available and get prioritized, it has a positive impact on the workforce, because the quicker we can get people diagnosed, give them the ability to have the right support in place, and put that structure in place where they can thrive.
Yeah.
The
ask
better
the right questions.
Yeah, and ask the right. But as you say, there's a generalized approach for the many.
Yeah.
And then there's a very restricted resource available for the one-to-one.
Yeah.
So what do you think, from your perspective and what you've been learning, what has been the biggest, other than finance, because that's a key one, and I know you're quite involved with that side of things. But what would you say is the biggest obstacle to make this more of a priority when it comes to whether it be local government, national, or even from a global perspective?
That's pretty much an impossible question to answer without delving into the whole history of the planet and the whole history of disability and society and capitalism and everything else.
And we've only got half an hour left.
Exactly. So I'll try and be succinct here and keep it short and sweet. I think of everything, there's still a view that autistic people matter less. I know that's not a very nice thing to say, but in the cult light of day, I think frankly autistic people are not given the level of importance because they are autistic that other people do. And fundamentally, that's the key issue, that we still live in a fundamentally ableist society where autistic people are seen as lesser. And also I think there's an element that because we're seen as economically not being as productive as other groups of people are, which I'd argue is not even true, but I think it's seen as being true. I think those two are the main reasons that if autistic people were seen on a par with whatever normal people even are, or whatever they are, if that's even a thing, but if we're seen not through an ableist lens, and if we were seen as economically productive as other groups of people are, I think overnight you would see quicker diagnoses, far greater support in place, far more money, far more support, training, awareness, understanding, everything.
I think that opens a whole can of worms there, Jack.
It does.
But it's a beautiful can of worms because, the reality is, and this is why I'm so excited about, what Joel wants to accomplish through Rockstar X, because initially, we had the conversation about whether...
Starting to?
Say that again?
I want to. I think we're starting to.
Well, we're starting to scratch the surface, but I think it's a long journey ahead because it's, we can't fool ourselves. It's not something we're going to do overnight. But I think the reality is, initially when Joel and I were looking at Rockstar X and how to form the company and things like that, and most of the organizations around autism are charity funded. They're charity organizations, so it's like you say, Jack. It's that kind of are lesser than, we kind of give to a cause, as it were, as opposed to, well, hey, we're actually investing in an organization here, into a skill sets, into a different way of thinking. So having more and more organizations that are run by autistic people, or departments run by autistic people, where we can show off the creativity and the incredible talents that are available, the quicker the world will kind of go, who are these autistic people with a superpower that they keep doing this and they're doing that. So some noise needs to be made about it, and this is why we're excited about Rockstar X. just creating that awareness around autism, but also opportunity. So how long have you been with the National Autistic Society now as an ambassador and working with philanthropy and all of those things?
So I've worked there for 9 years. It was 9 years on
Wow.
Friday.
Congratulations.
Cheers, fella. Thank you. And I've worked in fundraising specifically since April 2017. So 7 years in April.
Okay, so you've seen a lot going on. Tell us about some of the creative things that you've seen and some of the talented people that you have come across, so that those watching this, can be a little bit more educated about like some of the exciting things that are happening out there, and then we'll get into a little bit more of what the NAS can do for people that may be watching as we go on as well.
Yeah, so with creativity and fundraising, it's an interesting dynamic in that fundraising itself, it's a pretty belt and braces profession. Like you send emails, you send applications, you sometimes meet people for coffee. That's what you do. That's your job. But the way you get to those places, that's where you think creatively. Like, how do you speak to someone so they will meet you in person? Like, how do you send them an email that will make them want to give money? So creativity isn't necessarily the finished product, because ultimately I'm trying to raise money, and money's not creative. It's just there. It's what comes in. But how you get the journey, that's the creative bit, where you devise plans for how you will attract certain supporters to give money. It's how on the cash appeal you will vary the fonts, you will change the pictures, you will alternate quote, or not alternate quotes, you will choose a certain set of quotes or a certain case study. That's where you are creative. Like, to give an example, a couple of years ago on the cash appeal, I had the idea of putting a donate button in the email. So people with one click can donate money, and it makes the whole process a lot quicker. And that was the best appeal we had. So that's sort of creativity in fundraising. Like, how can you make the actual process of donating as quick and easy as possible? And I found a solution to that with a certain degree of creativity. I mean, I'm not a genius or anything, but it worked at the time and it got the job done. So, creativity, it's not creating, Dark Side of the Moon. I'm not making pulp fiction here, but what I'm doing is using my creativity to try and raise more money in a way which is original, which will excite people. Because when we're raising money, like the people we're raising money from, they know what we're doing. Like, I'm literally a fundraising manager, so it's not as if that I'm in some sort of cloak and dagger way, like, asking people to donate here. Like, they know what I'm up to, they know what I'm doing. So I have to be creative in the way that I talk to people, and the way that I form relationships, to strengthen the bonds of friendship and get on with people and build alliances in a way that they want to donate money to a good cause.
Absolutely. And tell me, through your journeys, you must have seen and know of a lot of people that are autistic that are successful in different lines of work.
Yeah.
What astounding examples can you think of that most people that are just not they layman, when it comes to the term autistic, but real life examples that you can give of individuals that are part of large organizations or created their own organizations that are autistic, that we can let people know examples of these amazing people. Where can we find these individuals?
So I think I'll provide two answers to that question. I think the first thing to say is that to be the best in your field, whatever the field is, it could be weightlifting or archery or artistry, it could be anything. But I think you have to have a certain amount of neurodivergent traits to be the best at anything. Like, to be a genius, I think you have to have a certain amount of obsession, of focus, and attention to detail to make you the best in your field. Like, to be the best footballer in the world, you have to practice thousands and thousands of free kicks on cold, muddy, wet parks or training grounds, in the morning. To be the best golfer, I've seen a rule that you have to do your golf swing 10,000 times to make it change to your golf swing. Now, to be that committed and that focused, you have to have a certain degree of neurodivergent traits, I think, to be that obsessed and that focused that you will swing a golf club 10,000 times to make one tiny alteration to your golf swing. So I think if you look at the best achievers in literally any field, even a joke one, I think you will find a certain degree of neurodivergent / autistic traits. That's the first thing I'd say. In terms of specific people, I'd be a bit reluctant to put names to people, quite frankly. I think it's up to people themselves.
Without names, but I'm just talking about examples of, like a CEO who has built a company, or, somebody in tech, or just examples of companies and what's been achieved, not necessarily the individuals attached, if that makes sense. Just so that we can protect their their anonymity, as it were, as well.
I think if you look at the most big companies in the world, whether it's Microsoft or Google or Facebook, I think there will be neurodivergent traits in how they were put together. I think one example I'll give, and it's creative. And he's passed away now, so I think I can say it. But there's a great film director called Stanley Kubrick, who made A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, Doctor Strangelove, Full Metal Jacket. And there's one story I heard about him once, where he was location hunting before, I think, Full Metal Jacket, and he's driving a car, and he's like pointing out the window saying, we're going to do that scene there, that scene there, that scene there, blah, blah, blah. And then he's so focused on the location that he crashes the car. Like, the car spins off a sort of small cliff face, not a big one, but like the car drops a few feet, rolls over, lands upside down. And Stanley Kubrick gets straight out of the car, climbs onto the now upturned roof, and then goes, right, we can film at that one, that location there, that location there, that location there. Now that
so
man,
focused.
Yeah, like he crashes that car. There's a passenger with him as well, by the way. He's behind the passenger seat. He's not even asked if he's okay yet. And he's straight back on the upturned roof saying, like, we're going to do that scene there, and that scene there, and that scene there. And here's the guy who used to do like 100 takes of like the smallest scene to get every detail right. Now, that might have been an autistic man. I'm just saying that right now. And he's passed away 25 years ago. So I think I can say it and not feel as if I'm outing someone. But that's an example of how a genius in his field was plainly very neurodivergent.
Well, this is the thing is, one of the things people forget is, autism's been around for a long time. And the reality is that it can take up to, as you said, 6 years to get a diagnosis. Most people haven't got the time or the patience to kind of go through that. And, in the UK, what is it, 700,000 that have been diagnosed?
Yeah.
And that have been diagnosed.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if we put a consensus on this and said, hey, tomorrow, everybody in the UK, 65 million people, have to go through and get a diagnosis, that number would be huge, because there are so many people that don't realize. For me, when I learned that I had ADHD, I was like, and I started looking at all the things that previously, like, I'd lose focus on things, or I like high level stuff, and some areas I like detail, but where the missed opportunities were, they were because I didn't know how to get myself focused. And that's one thing I have to keep reminding myself. And I like the fact that Joel's done a time check already, because I can.
I know what you're going to do though after the hour. You always say that to me. We've gone over the hour every single time without fail. Always, we've gone over the hour.
Let's aim not to. But the reality is there are so many people around. If we are a little bit more patient to understand those people, and be less judgmental, and a little bit more inquisitive. The more inquisitive we are, the more we learn. I sit here with the two of you, and you both on video talking publicly, where I know if I asked anybody else, would an autistic person be willing to do this? They're like, no, they would, like, it's not even a consideration. Yet here you are, but you guys have accomplished so much in the few years that you guys have had already. So, Jack, let me ask you this question before I go to Joel. What has been the light bulb moment for you with your autism where you've kind of gone, okay, I now know I've got this thing, but how can I can now make a difference because I know certain things? Has there been anything that's kind of been that trigger for you?
I'm not sure there was one moment. It's just being diagnosed. I mean, as soon as I was diagnosed, I thought, I want other people to not go through what I went through. I don't want them to have been bullied at school, gone to uni, had a horrible time there, and only then realise, oh wow, I'm autistic. That makes sense. But I want other people to not go through what I went through, and to have more opportunities than I did at a younger age. That's purely my motivation.
I mean, I'm going to come back to that because that's actually freaking massive. That's huge. But I'm going to come back to that. Joel, for you? I can see the cogs turning.
For me, well, I went through 4 schools, and after all that, a specialist college. Did I learn anything there? Not really, but I would not want my experience to. I wouldn't wish that on my own worst enemy if I even had one.
So, this is what I want. Those people that are watching this is what I want you to understand is, every single one of us are human beings. And, people like you, Jack, and people like you, Joel, you're God's special people that have come here to actually do something to prevent others from going through what you specifically have gone through. And, to be able to do that, firstly, that takes courage and strength. Hats off to both of you because it's not an easy task. And one of the conversations I had recently, and I have on a regular basis now, is the example of schooling. So for me, I know Joel and I were talking about my personal experience earlier, where fighting with schools and dealing with how people treat individuals that are different is absolutely frightening. Because we know that teachers, as an example, in a 3-year cycle will only get like 4 hours exposure and training on neurodiversity. And the reality is that autistic person's experience in the classroom with that teacher will define so many things, not only in the child's future, but also the other children in that class's future as to how they treat autistic people. And for me, that's the big lesson that we need to learn, is how we treat others is how we show others that observe us how to treat and what becomes normal. So things like bullying, which unfortunately I was a victim of bullying at school, and similar to yourself, Jack, I didn't really kind of know that I was until somebody 20 years later after school phoned me up one day and apologized for bullying me at school. And I was like, is that why I went through all those terrible experiences? But the reality is how we respond and especially leaders respond to individuals. So if we're a boss and we're running a company, or we're a teacher in a school, and we single out people that are different and we treat them in a way that says you're not good enough, you're not acceptable, you are a distraction to the rest of us, what you are doing is you are saying this is okay to treat people that are different in this way. I know from personal experience, children that have been put in the corridor because they're a distraction or they are disruptive as a result of bullying, but the cause doesn't get looked at. So, as an example, um, whether you're autistic or ADHD or neurodivergent in some way, we all have our triggers, and the school and also corporate need to look at what are those things that trigger, so that they can enable those environments and also help build a better society, because those individuals that feel it's okay to bully and to take advantage of people or to just sideline them as if they're not good enough, those individuals need to be, the problem is that needs to be addressed at that point early on in schooling, so that those children know how to be able to be more socially aware of their circumstances and surroundings. I always laughed at school with the children that were bullied, because I always knew that one day those bullies are going to be working for one of those people that they bully.
Yeah.
And karma is it's a wonderful
bitch.
thing. But we have a social responsibility to ensure that as leaders we are showing how people should be treated, as opposed to turning around and going, because you're different, you'll be excluded. So, Jack, from a National Autistic Society perspective, if there's somebody who's watching this, either they are autistic or they know somebody or they have a family member that's autistic, what kind of support and things are in place that they can reach out to the NAS to for help and support? What tell us from your experience.
Yeah, so we have various services which can provide help. So we have a branch network. We've got around 100 branches around the country. We've
Wow.
got like 20,000 branch members in total.
Sure.
So if you go on our website and just Google NAS branches, maybe put National Autistic Society first, actually, or you might see stuff and NAS in the wrapper. Often I've done that a few times before. Google NAS and up comes Illmatic rather than what I'm looking for. Yeah, if you Google National Autistic Society branches, you'll find our branch network, and you can hopefully find your nearest branch geographically. And at your nearest branch, there will be other people in your shoes. I mean, other autistic people, other parents, other guardians, who, for their own experiences, can provide solace, advice, guidance, and hopefully it will blossom into friendship, spending time together, going out on trips, that sort of thing. So we've got branches which can provide in-person help. We've got a service called Parent to Parent, where parents of autistic children volunteer to answer inquiries from other parents of autistic children. So yeah, I think online you type in a web form, and in a couple of weeks, a volunteer will get in touch with you and have a chat with you about whatever the problem is, and then they will talk to you on an ongoing basis as well, giving you the support and advice that you need, so that if there is an issue with your child, say it might be they're showing self-injurious behaviour, or they're having toilet issues, or they just won't, having issues with their eating or whatever it is, there are services out there which can help you. We also have an online community. We've got online forums and stuff. We're not quite on Discord yet. I think that's a couple of years away, but we have the old-fashioned forum still going. where thousands of people chat every day about various things, autism related. So yeah, with our branches, with our parent-to-parent service, with our online community, there are lots of avenues which you can go down that we can support you with.
So, the National Autistic Society is one of the oldest around that I'm aware of.
The oldest, yeah.
Yeah. Is that globally or just in the UK?
I believe we're the world's first autism charity. It's a nice story, actually. It was in the late 1950s. There was a trainee Montessori nursery teacher who was doing a teacher training, went to a hospital and saw all of these children displaying quite unusual traits and behaviours. And she went back to this hospital a few times, saw it was the same thing every time. And she thought that they're displaying quite odd sort of traits here. How can we support them? So she founded a small school in her own basement to teach these children. And autistic wasn't even really a thing then. Like they weren't really sure what the condition was. They just knew they were different. So Sybil Elgar, that was her name. She herself, in her own basement, taught I think 6 children. And then the parents were so happy with the teaching they got, they bought like a building and converted it into a school.
Wow.
And that was in the mid-1960s that it was founded. It's the world's first ever autism-specific school. And Sybil Elgar had friends in high places and got the money to build the school, along with the parents, from all sorts of rich and famous people. John Lennon was one of them. John Lennon gave I think a few £100 to help found the school, which is now named the Sybil Elgar School, and her runner, and it's still a school to this day.
Wow, that is incredible. It shows you, it starts with action, and with so many of us becoming more aware of what the challenges are, but also what the tools are to enable environments and make the world a better place. I think there's still a lot of education. I think it's a lifelong journey, probably, at least another 4 or 5 generations before we get anywhere close to the ideal situation. But it's, people like yourselves coming together and be willing to share your time and your stories, that this is where the beauty starts. And, I believe my motto has always been, you never know where a conversation may lead. And the more and more conversations we have, you just never know who's listening or who's watching, who sits there and goes, you know what, I've been impacted by this. I want to make a difference. And we all have different resources. Some of us have financial resources. Some of us have time. Some of us have, connections to people that we have resources. And in any shape or form, if we come together, I believe, Rockstar X's aim is to be a global spokesperson for autism, awareness, as well as enabling through work opportunities and, through music and being able to make a huge difference, but by bringing organizations together from around the world, because as you know, there are a lot of autistic groups and societies around the world, and some of them only serve a very small local community, but they've got experience that on a global scale could help fast track things that if it was shared, the whole process for everybody would become a lot easier. So Jack, firstly, thank you so much for coming on and answering questions and just being so open. I was speaking to Joel before this, and I was saying that
which day?
No, well, today. That's a good point. But one of the things that we're in discussion about at the moment is we use LinkedIn Audio for LinkedIn Audio events on a regular basis for networking, discussing different topics, and with Joel and a few other people. There's a wonderful lady, Paulette, I was speaking to earlier, who's a parent of an autistic son, who has a wealth of experience as well. But one of the things that we want to start doing is looking at running a regular audio session where autistic people can just come in, because it's not necessarily recorded. There's no overwhelm from video and all the rest of it. And you can just come and have a conversation, ask questions, answer questions. And we'd love, somebody like yourself to be involved if that's something that you're keen on. Anybody from NAS, as it were, but purely just to keep the conversation going around what's available, what are the challenges people face. I mean, some of the things you shared with me today, I already feel like I know you 10 times better, but I also feel like I haven't scratched the surface, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Would you be open to doing some audios with us?
I mean, I'm a man. I love to do propositions. Why not? maybe not every week, but certainly. I'm delighted to come on again. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so excellent stuff. So yeah, we'll discuss the details. We haven't got a clue yet, to be fair.
You said to me, Mac, before we got on this call. You said to me quarterly.
Well, we just throwing ideas. Right, it was only a conversation earlier today. So, as I say, you never know where a conversation's going to lead. And 18 months, no, 2 and a bit years ago, I got introduced to Joel through LinkedIn. Just as an introduction, and I didn't know, all these other things were going to happen, Rockstar X, and all these incredible people from around the world that we've been speaking about neurodiversity and educating a lot of corporates where they didn't even know what the word neurodivergent meant. So autism is a more popular word that people know, but the reality is, would either of you say that the world knows enough about autism?
No.
Hell no.
No hesitation. See?
No.
There's no clue. And there needs to be more. And one of the things I liked about the conversation I had with Joel a few years ago was the fact that, we need more autistic people talking about how they want to be supported and enabled, rather than the interpretation of outsiders thinking, quick question, Jack, have you ever been in a room with somebody where they are talking about you in third party?
Probably. Yeah.
So,
I mean, for me, it's more about the platform. Like, if you give autistic people on that platform, they will talk. I mean, I'm doing it right now. Like, if there are opportunities, confidence, we can talk all day. I mean, get me talking about, even winning the test match yesterday. I can talk to you all day about that. No problem.
Don't give us any ideas.
This is the key thing, is putting these platforms together where it's comfortable for people to come on and become confident, to come out. The people that we have seen come through our audio rooms is an example where, I mean, they were stuttering when they first came up on and to come and introduce themselves. Now they're all running their own shows, and I'm like, mind blown. Like, what a great thing to know.
What you mean, soon?
Well, there we go.
Hopefully will be.
Jack running the autism channel on LinkedIn. Why the heck not?
Yeah, 1 million subscribers every week. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Jack, any final words or information you'd like to share about what you do and how people can support the NAS before I go over to Joel to kind of end off our discussion?
Yeah, sure. So NAS, coming up, it's World Autism Acceptance Week, and that's in the first week of April. On the website, they've got a whole stack of resources you can share with colleagues, friends, family, your office, your school. Please go on our website and check those out. If you want to donate money, we are so grateful. We do so much to help the autistic community, not just autistic people, but their friends and loved ones also. You can donate online. There's a lot of shout out, like colleague Gabby, who's listening in and helped arrange this. Cheers, Gabs.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, Gabs is an incredible person who we finally got to meet in person in December, and she's been part of this whole journey, and getting to know her and the hard work she does in the background as well. So massive thank you to you and the National Autistic Society for the years of contribution. Joel, any final words from you? Jack, if you can, in the comments of this event, just share any link you want to, because we want people to go there and have those resources available, as well as those who want to and are in a position to donate, that they can do so too.
Will do.
Excellent. Joel?
I got nothing. Well, that's the first. I have nothing more to say on that subject. It's except do follow all of us, and yes, head over to the NAS's website. Jack will put it in the comment.
Yeah, we've already had it scroll across the page as well.
And looking forward to seeing you all back in the next live.
Awesome stuff. Well, both of you, again, thank you so much. Jack, for coming on so late in the evening, and a real chilled, relaxing conversation, but I learned so much. And I hope that all of you that are watching this and have listened, we'd love your comments, your questions. If you have more questions for the NAS or for Jack, please drop that into the event as well, and we'll make sure that they get those. All your support and feedback is well appreciated. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and please share with those people that you know of that this could be of benefit to as well. So again, Joel, thank you. Jack, a massive thank you. As always, great pleasure to meet you in person recently, and now getting to do a little bit more time and then the few words we got in before. So really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.